Aloha, Karina.
Aloha, Roshi.
Yeah.
Good to see you. Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Thriving Healer. I'm your host, Karina Nickerson. And as you're aware, I am interviewing leaders in the healing arts, all about growing the passion in your heart and your natural gifts into a prosperous life that you love. And today I'm beyond honored to be introducing you to my teacher, Dr. Andrew Shugio Daijo Bonnici, also known by me as Roshi. Dr. Andrew Shugio Bonnici is a Master Zen teacher and counselor with a doctorate in humanistic depth psychology. He has been married for 52 years, has 2 grown sons, a daughter in heart, and 4 grandchildren. He currently lives on the Big Island of Hawaii with his whole family. There he continues to educate, train, and mentor locally, publish and teach internationally, and provides video counseling, coaching, and consultation globally. You can access his public education website at zendoctor.com and view his latest book site at zenintimacy.com. This is actually, I have a copy of your book here, Boundless Intimacy. And I met Roshi, gosh, it must be almost 20 years ago. And he helped me so much at a point when I was, those of you who know me and know my story, I had a point in my life when things were really hard and rocky, and I was at a crisis point. And I began meditation practice, and I really wasn't sure how to integrate some of the things that were coming up for me psychologically in my practice. And then I was so blessed to find this man who has been with me since the beginning, and I'm so honored to have him on the show today. Welcome.
Thank you.
Welcome. Get a little
Thank you.
teary. So is it okay if we just dive right in?
Yeah, let's go right in. I know that Karina showed me some questions that she had emailed me, so there were several of them that really kind of stood out, and I think would be important for everyone to really have an understanding of. And first is, what is core self? That's one of the dominant themes that I get quite a bit, because people are not sure how to embody core self, or what intimacy with core self is. So we all have a sense of what ego self functioning is. It's very cerebral. It's different types of cerebral functions that work together in a complementary and integrated way. But the sense of wholeness is actually just all those functionings happening at the same time. And so the sense of wholeness that we experience in our headiness is more cerebrally created. And one of the issues that comes up is, how do we view ego self-functioning and its grasping and its pushing away and arising desires, etc., and conditioned personality dynamics, which can be also very cerebral. And if you try to use the mind to look at the mind, it gets very confusing. And so what we try to do, and it also, by the way, it also confuses our hearts, which we have all kinds of stuff that go on, ambivalence in our hearts, or 2 different opposing feelings that conflict with each other, etc. And then we should be listening to our heart or to our head, and we get into those kind of circumstances. So for us, it's really important to ground our ego self-functioning and all our thinking in what we call core self-intimacy. And the best way to start having an understanding of core self-intimacy is to think about our gut core intelligence. Now, when we talk about gut core intelligence, everybody has a sense of what that is. And it's like a hunch or an intuition that comes from your gut, and you try to follow that. It feels that people's understanding of it is more like it's cellular, neurological, and with the gut core mind that's coming up more and more now in our research. But what I'm talking about more when I talk about core self has to do with that area of gut core intelligence, but more at the center point of gravity in our lower abdomen. And this center point of gravity, when I say the center point of gravity, it is literally the center point of gravity for your whole body. And so there is no center point of gravity up here. The point of gravity is very visceral and it's very somatic. It's embodied. And the best place to understand it is in your lower abdomen. I'm going to stand up for a minute to show you. So right here, let's see, can you see? Yeah, so here's my belly, and here's my belly button. I'm pointing to it. Well, two fingers below that is your lower abdomen. This whole area, there's like a small oval that cuts across that area. That's your lower abdomen. At the center point, here's my belly button. At the center point of the lower abdomen is where you experience the stillness of core self. It's not, so when we sit in meditation, we're not really interested in stilling the mind or calming the heart. We're really interested more in letting each inhalation sink us into the still center point of gravity. And the way I encourage people to do this is to be intimate with your breath and appreciate your breath like a fresh breeze of air, and that refreshes you. And with each inhalation, you do it in a belly breath. So your belly will expand slightly, and at the end of that expansion, your lower abdomen, instead of going forward, will tilt downward at a 45-degree angle. And when you tilt it down and you feel the inhalation going down, you'll sense a quality of sensuality and pleasure in feeling that area of your lower abdomen. So it'll draw you, which is great, because the more you begin to feel that, the less you want to be trying to figure out what's going on, or your heart's all moving around. So the more you feel that sensuality, the more you're drawn to it with each inhalation. And then you'll feel at the center point, you'll feel underneath that sensuality a stillness that begins to arise in your body. And you're not creating that stillness. That's an innate stillness at the core center of gravity. That center point of gravity intersects with the quantum depth functioning of total reality and physical reality. So when we're in meditation and we experience core self, that's why we experience like a stillness that's not only in our body, but happens to be everywhere all at once. So we feel like this great support from something that we know nothing about, except that it feels like it's in our body and everywhere all at once. And I like to call it infinite wisdoming, or the vast oneness that integrates all the information everywhere all at once. So what we experience is that stillness of core self is really a flashing of vast impermanence. Stillness is something that happens so fast that it's everywhere all at once. You'll never hear that definition of stillness, but that's exactly what it is. I've been researching this for over 40 years, and it's the only way I can integrate it into our Western depth psychology coming out of Carl Jung and the self-actualization of Abraham Maslow and Rogers and all that. This is so important to be in touch with this quality of sensuality and stillness in your body. First of all, it's more fun than being in our heads, alive from our heads. And when we experience that stillness, it allows our hearts to be open and free without feeling like you're vulnerable, or it just feels good to be authentic because you're grounded in that place. And so there's more of a sense of that there's a tenderness and caring for all beings and things. That's the quality of the empathy that comes through the heart, from the visceral empathy that you're experiencing in your core. When I say visceral empathy, I'm really saying that you feel interconnected, limitlessly interconnected with all beings and things. So you literally are in boundless intimacy, and that's the title of the book, boundless intimacy with all beings and things. So you have a visceral empathy, not only with human beings, insects, creatures, but also inanimate objects. Just like we were when we felt like when we were 2 years old, you know, we had this kind of visceral empathy for our blanket and for our, all kinds of things that we had, our bicycles. And all this. We felt they were beings. Well, that's how underneath all that ego self development, that's still there in everybody. But it's there in a way that we can access it in such a tremendously healthy and fruitful way to have a thriving success, thriving and deepening and loving relationships, creativity, intuition. It enhances all these qualities of being a human being, being more inclusive, less biased, less prejudiced in our perceptions and our thinking. So for any thriving healer, no matter what methodology you use, it's so important to really ground your skill to, Karina knows me about this, I get emotional, to ground your skill in your center point of gravity in your core self that you feel in your sensuality, and let that guide your skill and your interconnect. Remember, it opens up not only your heart empathy with the other person that you're working with or the class that you're working with, but also it's your visceral interconnectedness with that wisdoming, with that infinite wisdoming that's integrating all of nature, all the things that are going on in our body everywhere throughout time and space, and making it all happen in an orchestrated, wondrous way. We want to blend with that wisdom. We want to yield to that wisdom. See? So when I'm talking, that's all, it's like I'm anchoring in the stillness of my core, and at the same time, I want to share this that's so important for all human beings, because it's the hope of humanity. It's the only way that we can begin to talk together with some kind of integrity and truth, and without manipulation or dishonesty, and without just being for ourselves, you know, being too narcissistic in our ego self functioning. So I think, again, I just want to emphasize that it's not about getting rid of our ego self. It's about having a healthy ego self, grounded in our core self's guidance, in our core self's illumination of what we're doing to ourselves and what we might be doing to others because of our drama, our attachment to grasping and pushing away. So it's really, really important to have this quality of seeing ourselves, but when we see ourselves through our core, there's no judgment. So I'm writing a book for kids right now, and I call it the peaceful light. You know, it's like the peaceful light in your body. That's the stillness. The peaceful light is a stillness in your body that can illuminate everything, how your ego self function works, how, you know, what you're doing to yourself, your drivenness, you know, how to soften that, how to refine your ego self function to be more healthy. It's kind of like having an onboard therapist, you know, because she doesn't judge, or he doesn't judge, and it just says, oh, look at you doing that, and you think, oh, okay, reel in my ego self, say, okay, begin again. Here I go. And so it's about beginning again with compassion and forgiveness for ourselves throughout this whole process. Because whatever methodology you're using, you're practicing. And in that practice, you will learn. The more you stay in touch with your ego self and yield to the wisdoming of your ego self, and blend with the infinite wisdom of the universe that's happening as a flashing moment everywhere all at once, right where you are in your body. Then when you blend, you totally relax, and you know your greatness in that moment has the same quality as the Milky Way galaxy, the sun, the moon, and the rhythm of that with authenticity and dependability, you know, and regularity, which is wonderful.
I love, there's so much about what you just said that I just really resonated for me, and I know it'll resonate with others and the people who are listening. And something that was that you really bring in your work and in your teachings, and I tell my students this and my clients this too when I share, you know, your wisdom with them. There's never a conversation I have with you where we don't really touch upon grounding, anchoring into, as you just really beautifully unpack, like the visceral experience of being in our lower abdomen and the core. It seems so, we have such a I think something you mentioned was that support. You know, we all long to feel supported.
Yes.
Yet we look externally for that support, and it makes us mad, literally. It's like, it makes us crazy and insane, and we act in ways that aren't in alignment with our inherent goodness. And what I hear you saying is through this practice, there's an actual, and I've experienced this myself, you know, is like, just when I began, you know, teaching publicly and having private clients, and my private client practice grew pretty rapidly, and people wondered, what are you doing? You know, like, what's going on? That's part of the reason why I'm doing this series, actually,
Right.
because of that. But I'll tell you what.
Yeah.
I'll tell you what, it's because of my devotion and my connection to my core and to the wisdom that I have within me that's happened, because there is a one within who knows, and there is an inherent support within. And when we start to really tap into that through practice, it makes itself known to us. I think that's at least how I experience it. And then we share that quite naturally with others. And then the benefit is, you know, it's like, it just happens. And so, I mean, people resonate with that. It's what they're all longing for too. We're all longing to come home to ourselves. And this is it's a very direct way of doing that, you know? So, I mean, I almost just want to like sit for a few breaths, like anchoring into our cores together. And like, maybe we can invite the rest of the listeners to do the same. If I know this wasn't on the questions or the outline, but I'm just feeling that right now. So would you mind just like really simply allowing us to drop in, and maybe we could spend 10 breaths or something like that all together. And if you're listening, maybe you can pause the recording and really do this. Like, I really encourage you to actually practice this with us when it's safe for you to do so. Yeah.
Wonderful. That sounds good.
Okay.
You let
So
us know.
yeah.
Okay. Wonderful.
Thank you. So there's such a can you talk about, because so many of us healers in the healing arts, and when I say healers, I mean, you know, I don't really think of myself as a healer. I help other people find their own inner capacity to heal. And, you know, but other, yoga teachers, meditation teachers, coaches, therapists, body workers, energy workers, these are some of the people that are listening. Either they are currently or they're aspiring to do so. There's so much talk about the heart and the importance of the heart. And there's something here that you were sharing that I want to touch in on with a little more focus is, can you talk about how the heart functions if it's not supported by the hara, by the low belly, as opposed to how it can function when it has that support?
Yes. So when, like let me take it, give a good example in relationship. Being in marriage for 52 years, I've got some experience with that. But it's like when we're in relationship and something is said that really wounds the heart, and there's a sense of withdrawing or armoring, in our bodies, and protecting our heart and our I and me and mine, and we have in our head, but our heart predominantly. When we feel like we're alone in this process, that we're wounded, and if we let go into ego self's reaction, it might come out as angry words, it might come out as all kinds of different things. But when we realize that that's happening, and we take a breath and sink into the sensuality of our lower abdomen and feel the stillness of our core, then we have a sense of something bigger than this moment is happening, that's guiding us towards balance and blending with a deep compassion and wisdom in that moment. So when we sense that in our body, it gives us a perspective and a support to actually work through that process with the other. And it allows our heart to reach through the bars of woundedness, the cage of woundedness, that we put up. That's, of course, cutting us off from love. We're saying, ha, we're keeping love from you. That doesn't work very well for either person. So it's like in that place, it's like the heart begins to be more open without feeling vulnerable, knowing that it's anchored in a vast oneness or a stillness that embraces us just as we are, that wants our heart to function in an open, loving, and caring way, at the same time taking care of ourselves and our good boundaries, in terms of everyday life, but really allowing for intimacy to express itself in every refreshing moment at different levels in our life, whether it's intimacy with our loved ones, intimacy with and lovingness with the people that we just meet in our everyday lives, and openness to their experience of pain, or in their bodies or in their hearts or minds as we're relating to them, so that we have a bigger view of our humanity and experience our humanity in a deeper way, no matter if we're male or female. Sorry, Mike.
Okay.
Let me turn it off. Sorry.
No, that's okay. Yeah.
Yeah. So does that help? That's kind of like so for me, like I have a picture on the web too I put the ad up in India for the book, and I have a woman sitting in zazen, and she in her mudra, where her center point of gravity is a heart that's shining out. So it's like that's her visceral empathy. That visceral empathy is so big that it includes the emotional and heartfelt empathy that we have with others, but it also allows us to be much deeper in the love and the compassion that we have, and actually feel in our everyday life for all beings and things. And so when we practice this way, when we show up, whether it's for a human being, a loved one, our grandchildren, when we show up, even for the kitchen cabinet or the computer or the scroll or whatever it is, we show up and we with tenderness and care, which means we're not objectifying them. We're not using them as objects for our benefit or for our desire. But we're actually just wanting to meet them in limitless interconnectedness and intimacy from our core self with an open heart and a lucid and a clear thinking mind. So when we move around in that way, we're really they're really bringing our aliveness to its peak threshold. Because usually our aliveness is diminished because we objectify things, and most of our energy in our body is cerebral. So we're relating to things, grabbing the cabinet, slamming it, going to the next, opening this, shutting that, knocking things over accidentally sometimes, like that. Or even in relationship, we're coming from that headiness. We're hearing the words, but we're not empathizing, all that kind of quality. So when we show up for an inanimate object, we're literally being viscerally present as a moment. Our body is the moment. We're not practicing, being in the moment. We are the moment when we are like this, when we have this quality of intimacy. We don't arouse cerebral mindfulness. It's not cerebral mind. People go, right, I've got to be mindful about this, but they're coming at it from their headiness. It's not about being headily mindful. It's about being viscerally embodied with tenderness and caring and intimacy. Then you show up. It's like then you're really there. Then that thing is calling you out. Your partner is calling you out. So be there. How to be there with some quality of openness and tenderness with your heart, to express that through behavioral caring in some way. How you touch it, how you sensually experience it, no matter how simple it is, And so my big word I always want people to remember, and this, is Zen is all about intimacy. It's not about discipline. It's not about rigidly holding yourself for, an hour in meditation. No, it's about intimacy. It doesn't matter if it's 5 minutes. It doesn't matter. It's the intimacy that counts. And so that the word intimacy, I use that even with my grandchildren. I've mentioned it to Karina too. Is that if I hear one of the boys, he's 10 years old, and they go in the bathroom, and I always tell them, put down the toilet seat and put down the lid. I'm a double guy. So it's kind of it's you do that because when the Buddha walks in, you want to have it present in that way. And who's the Buddha? You. So when you walk, you see that you're taking care of that. So when they go into the bathroom and I hear them flush, and then all of a sudden they hear, bang, they let the lid go. I said, hey, Bodhi, come here. I said, were you intimate with the lid when you did that? No, so I said, always remember, Bodhi, be intimate with what you're doing. When you open the door, get that. Be intimate with that. That's all I'm asking. I'm not, because everything has its true place and its true function. Everything we're in interdependency with so many things in our life, and how we treat them all comes back in a different way, from different angles, whether it's in a relationship, if we're treating people in a dishonest or manipulative, or we're not having the depth of empathy that we're with them, then that's going to come back at us. So it's really important to have a sense of your core self, to live from your core self, to speak from your core self, to think from your core self, grounded in your core self. And that makes life really richer, more wondrous and surprising. It's always surprising to me, because your life keeps unfolding. As long as you keep showing up from this place of intimacy and caring and tenderness for yourself, for each thing that you're participating in, things begin to unfold in your life as an ungraspable enlightenment. You may not be able to understand it mentally, but you begin to experience that unfolding of ungraspable enlightenment in your own life as something that's very innate and natural to being a human being who cares, who is open, who is inclusive, who is always ready to yield to the wisdom of each moment rather than to manipulate the moment to serve ego self. See?
I love, yeah, absolutely. And it's like this real, like, even as I'm listening to you right now, it's like, it's as simple as just dropping my awareness in my lower abdomen and then noticing that I can listen from that place.
Yeah.
Right? Like, y'all might try it now. Like, if you drop your awareness down into your lower abdomen, notice that you can still hear my words. You can still see us. Yes. But it's you're receiving it in a different way, and you're receiving it, you're holding it differently than you are if you're up here. Yeah. Because right. And then these two, the head and the heart, I know, if this is all we're doing is connecting to these two, then again, there's not that support. There's not that foundation. There's the wisdoming, that depth of wisdom. It's like, I can hear you. And then if I'm here in my low belly, it's like something in me knows what to ask or what to say, or, it's a profound experiential wisdom that we have access to, that's beyond words, beyond books, even beyond, right? Yes. And like, I just, that's what I'm hearing. And I was thinking as you were talking, I'm like, just to get it really practical for people, like, this is, it's like as simple as you're going about your everyday life. One of the things that you first taught me when we first started working together was, I was like, so how do I practice with this moving forward until I talk to you again? And you just said, be in your body as much as you can in everything that you do. Yeah. And I mean, that simple instruction changed my life, along with, this teaching on on core intimacy is so important in terms of you really showing up in your life the way that you're designed to show up. It just feels better too, to be living from that place, and it's fresh and it's new, and yeah. So I just really appreciate how it's very tactile. It's something people can practice right away. So I wonder, like, can you, for someone who really wants to develop a deeper connection to their core wisdom, like, what would you suggest? How would someone get started with that?
Well, what I would suggest is I'm offering the gift on the checklist for a brief core self manual with photos. Sweet. And if anybody would like to get started and see the actual embodiment practice, whether it's on a seated cushion or on a chair, for Zen embodiment, and they can go to my website, zendoctor.com. And as soon as the website loads up, you'll see a little box pop up, and it says, just put your email address here, and you'll receive a PDF file that has the checklist that goes over the checklist of the behavioral checklist of how to establish your body in the seated form. And then it has photos along with that, like training photos that will help you visually get the context of how to sit, whether you're in a chair, and the form of your arms, etc., and your eyes, open eyes, and that will help you get started. If you want to get connected with me, you're free to email me. We can do a half-hour consultation to see if it works for you, if that would work for you, and then we could start a 5-month or 6-month process where we could meet either once a week for a while and then once every other week, that kind of thing, to really deepen your intimacy with the empowerment of core self. core self is an awesome power, but it's an awesome power that's not the kind of power that we usually, it's a power of tenderness. It's a power of embodiment. It's a power of presence. It's a power of generosity. It's a power of openness, and so that's really what this whole transmission of this embodiment is. It's really how to be this way. And one of the things that you brought up around the head and the heart, Karina, that I think it's important for people to know is once you actually experience your stillness of your core self, you really have a sense that your heart and mind are intimate. They're not separate anymore. It's not your heart feels one thing and your mind thinking another. Oh, I've got, is this logical for me to do, or is this, I'm feeling the opposite here. No, they tend to support each other and blend together more. Now you ask me, how does that happen? I have no idea. I know from the experience of it and the practice of it that becomes more the norm than the other, where there's a feeling of separation and always like, should I follow my heart or should I follow my head? Right. It's always, then you understand what heart-mind really means. Yes. In the traditional characters, Chinese characters, Shin, which is usually associated with heart, which actually with mind, is also heart. So when they wrote that character, they never separated the concept of heart and mind. It's always heart mind. So when I tell people, like there's Suzuki Roshi's book called Beginner's Heart Mind in Zen, but I really like Beginner's Mind. I really like Beginner's Heart Mind because it adds that quality of the heart, even with what we usually assume to be thinking and perceiving and knowing, through our. So it brings that heart in with that, and so there's more of a complementary function in ourselves as human beings, which also makes it more easeful and joyful to be in the body in that way so much, and that's what we're practicing, the body of living in the body of ease and joy, and that's aligning. If you think of your head as the tip of a pyramid, your heart is at the center, and your core is the foundation of that pyramid. You have to have a broad, strong foundation, like Mount Sumeru, or Mauna Kea here, Mount Mauna Kea. So you have that feeling of groundedness and depth, and at the same time you have the center of openness and the point of lucid clarity, to move through your everyday life and use ego self-functioning in a healthy way. You need your ego self to participate in society. You have an identity, you have responsibilities, all that stuff, and they're attributed to yourself with a name, your ego self with a name. But your core self does not have a name. Another important factor of the core self, you can't own your core self. Your core self is just not yours. That core self, that stillness that you feel, is in everything. So when in feeling of Zen embodiment, when you see like a whatever it is, it could be any mundane thing, like the computer, you know that the center point of gravity in the computer has a stillness, and all the parts have a stillness, and all the molecules have a stillness at their. So when you bow, you're bowing to that stillness. That means the stillness in me is in the stillness in you, and in the computer, and in my shovel, in the broom, in everything that I sensually connect with. So that makes my life like a lot of intimacy. That's what I'm saying. It's like boundless intimacy. That's a big support in our life. Everybody wants intimacy, but they think it's intimacy at one level, but there's so much depth to intimacy in the body that this is literally the quantum depth of intimacy that we can actually experience in the body, that we don't have to go to a quantum chamber to experience.
Pardon me. Yeah, this is real life here.
Okay, yeah, go ahead. Oh, hi. Hi, Esther.
He's my yeah. He was coming up to find my husband.
Okay. You're not here. So yeah, so it's just that, thinking about that quality of intimacy in our life. So intimacy becomes a word that you really want to embody in the deepest way possible. And that's in your center point of gravity, in your lower abdomen, where you begin to feel stillness. And your mind, what's really interesting is when, for people, it's really important, is when they're in meditation, all I'm asking you to do is just cherish your breath and follow each inhalation down to the center point of gravity. And at first, just feel your sensuality. Feel your sensuality until you really feel your sensuality with each inhalation. Once you feel your sensuality with each inhalation, just sense the center point of that sensuality in your lower abdomen. And then you will start experiencing a sense of groundedness, a sense of stillness, a sense of calmness, a sense of deep confidence or faith in yourself. And that's something that you're just allowing yourself to experience that's innately there. You're not creating it. So in everyday life, you can be wherever you are. And you remember to take 3 breaths and sink there. You're in touch. You're in intimacy. And once you're in intimacy, your mind has perspective. It's not myopic. It's not driven. It's not overwhelmed. Then all of a sudden you have space. And then you see where to move forward with heart, where to move forward with thinking, where to move forward with both heart and thinking. Where to move forward with your hands and your heart and thinking. If you're working with body work, with people.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, and so when you're done doing what you're doing, whether you're teaching or doing body work or anything else, then you've been supported to something way greater than you. And at the same time, you participate. How wonderful. You participated in relationship with a greatness that makes your moment great. But now you have total humility because it's not about you. It's about your intimacy and your connection with everything, with that client, with that patient, with the class, and with something greater. Then you're blending with the wisdom of each moment that's happening everywhere all at once. And that gives you a real sense of deep gratitude. You live with gratitude from that place because things keep happening to you and you think, thank you. Even in the midst of your pain, even in the midst of really deep physical suffering, even in the midst of emotional suffering, when you start having this intimacy, you realize there's this huge support for you through your body that guides you to work with healing in yourself, to reach out to healing from others, and it becomes a process of trust and a process that's guided by a deep wisdom that's in you.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. I'm so happy that you're here with us today. Like this has been so, I think, this teaching, what you just shared, will so profoundly change your life if you practice it. I don't care what kind of work you do. I don't care if you're, if you work in corporate, if you're a body worker, if you're a mom, if you're a dad, it doesn't matter. If you do this, your life begins to just simply in so many different ways make sense. Like just everything starts to like come into alignment. Yeah. Which is something we talk so much about in the spiritual community, but this is how do you come into alignment? This is how. This is how.
Up and down. Up and down. Yep.
You have to establish the foundation. The mountain does not exist without its foundation. Nothing exists without a foundation. So yeah. So thank you so much, Roshi, for sharing that. And I'll include all of the ways that you mentioned for us to get into contact with you and to receive your gift in the show notes.
Okay, that'd be great, Lena. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And thank you everyone for tuning in to this episode. And It's been awesome to be with you all. And remember to keep tuning into the whole series to receive the most value possible as I am interviewing other experts and leaders in the healing arts about overcoming the obstacles of limiting beliefs and self-doubt and inconsistent income and turning them into opportunities for clarity, confidence, and inspired livelihood. Sending you so much love and many blessings.
Thank you. Blessings, everyone.
Blessings. Thank you, Roshi.